Dre all day.
Dre Baldwin, balloverseas.com, the Overseas Basketball Blueprint. The question we're addressing here, does the level that you played at in college, or the level that you're currently playing at in college, or the level that you're thinking about playing at in college, matter when it comes to your professional basketball prospects? The answer to the question is yes, it does matter. Now I'm going to explain why it matters. Now this is something that I've talked about in the past. I'm going to talk about it again because people don't always listen, and some of y'all weren't around when I talked about this in the past. It's like this. Professional basketball teams, if they're looking at a player coming out of college, you have not played professionally yet. They're just looking at your pedigree up to this point. They're going to look at where you played in college because that's the last place that you played. That's the only thing they can go off of, right? And pro basketball teams, believe it or not, teams overseas, they have an idea of how, not an idea, but they understand how college basketball works. They understand the difference between the D1, D2, D3, and they understand the difference between a player scoring 20 points a game in D3 versus a guy scoring 20 points a game in D1, or doing it in D2 or JuCo or NAIA or what have you. Therefore, here's the thing you got to get. Teams overseas understand how their level of league, whatever league they're playing in, that team overseas, they understand how that translates from college basketball. In other words, there are teams in Germany that understand, all right, at this league in Germany, we know that a player who was an all-star at D2 can probably come here and be pretty good. Or at this league in Germany, we could take a guy who played D3 and maybe was okay, but maybe just didn't get a chance to blossom yet, maybe a late bloomer type of player. He could come here and they'll probably be able to blossom and get an opportunity because we've seen players do it in the past. Or it might be a team in the Euro League. They might say, all right, we only messing with guys who have played D1 ball and was like all conference because those are the type of players we need. We just looking for players who just fell short of making it to the NBA. We want them to come play with us. So every team overseas has a general concept of how different levels of college basketball performance translates to performing in the league that they compete in. So that's how teams, that's one way the teams look at players that are coming out of college. All right, we're at this level. A team overseas might be, all right, we're at this level. All right, we're looking for players coming out of college. We're looking for somebody coming from a D2 who average at least 15 points a game. Or we're looking for somebody from a D1 who is at least a starter. So things like that. Those are the type of things that teams overseas, that's part of their thought process. So does it matter what level you played at in college, given what I just explained to you? Of course it does. Now, does it mean that certain levels of college will preclude you from ever playing overseas? Of course not, because you're talking to a person who played Division III college basketball and didn't even have crazy stats. I mostly played out of position. I didn't even get to play guard at all in college because I went to a D3. We ain't had no size. We ain't had no tall people. So I was like a tall guy on the team. I ain't never get to play guard. I played overseas. I was playing guard the whole time. So does it mean you can't have a chance? Of course it doesn't mean that. Of course you can get a chance still. But teams overseas, again, they're gauging it off of where you played. So if you're a player who is already playing college basketball, you need to do the only thing you can do. If you're not planning on transferring, like moving up a level, if you're a D3 and you're not thinking about moving up to a D2 or a D2 to a D1, you're going to stay where you're at in college basketball right now. You need to perform your ass off and do the best that you can given the situation that you're in, given the place that you play, because there are players from every level who have made it to play basketball overseas. And let me give you another thing. Once you get overseas, what you do there will matter more than what you did in college. You see, when I was trying to get on, what I did in college mattered a lot because that was the only thing on my resume. The last place I played was playing in college. But once I got on and was overseas, the only thing that mattered to the next team I tried to get on was what I did at my previous overseas stop. So my whole college career ceased to exist as soon as I had a professional career. Everybody's usually going to look at what's the last thing that you did. So as soon as you get a professional resume, what you did in college doesn't really matter anymore unless you maybe sit out for a while or you're trying to just pitch yourself and you got maybe a D1 resume. They might say, all right, this guy's D1. He might have some talent, even though he hasn't played in 2 years. Let's give him a shot or something like that. But once you get on, especially if you come from a lower level school, like a D3 or a mid or low major D2, and maybe you didn't do too much in college, your stats wasn't great in college, as soon as you got a pro resume, that matters more. It supersedes what you did in college. So that's one thing I want to make sure I'm noting, because you can play your way up in professional basketball. There's a guy named Jeff Gibbs who played for the Carmen's Crew team in the TBT $2 million tournament in 2019. It was only $1 million this year, but in 2019 it was $2 million. And he was like a power forward. Dude's like 6'3", power forward, and he's older at this point. But he went to a D3 school. There was a good D3, a D3 that is competitive, but he went overseas to, I believe it was Germany he was playing in, because he was playing damn near before I got overseas. That's how old this dude is, how long he's been playing. But he started at a lower level, and he just worked his way up to higher and higher levels. So eventually he was playing in the top league in Germany. I don't remember what league he played in this past season, but he did his thing. He played his way up. So he started at a D3, and when he went overseas, he went to a league that usually looks at guys who are D3, but he played his way up to higher levels in Germany based on what he did as a pro. Not what he did in college, but what he did once he got in the game in the pros and worked his way up. So those of you who are in college that are already playing, you just got to make the most of your situation. Take the opportunity you can get when you get overseas, and then work your way up by doing your thing. Now, those of you who are already actually looking at colleges, let's say you're a high school player. I know some high school players watch these videos thinking about overseas basketball. Does the level that you choose to play at, will it affect you? If you've been listening to anything that I just said for the last 6 minutes, of course you understand that yes, it will. However, you need to be careful that you don't bite off more than you can chew. So if you are a D2 talent, but you insist on going D1, and you go to a D1 school, now you're sitting on the bench for a whole season or for 4 years, does that actually help your career? In many ways, it will not help your career. You're better off going to a D2 and being a starter and doing your thing, because you need the game experience, you need the confidence, you need the repetitions, than sitting on the bench at a D1. Even though some players who sit on the bench at a D1 may get an opportunity overseas, but their game is rusty. They ain't played. They've been sitting on the bench. They might have lost all their confidence. They might not know how to perform in the game because they've been sitting on the bench all the time. So getting that actual game repetition, those game experiences, that matters. I already talked about that a couple weeks ago. So make sure you're getting your game experience as often as you possibly can. And if you're looking at what level to play at, don't be so emotionally attached to going D1 that you turn down a solid D2 offer because you just want to go D1 just to say that you went D1. All right, there are players coming out of D2s getting contracts overseas. All right, I know about it. All right, one of my best friends is a D2 coach, so I know about this. I know coaches at the D3 level, I know coaches at the D1 level, and I know agents, and I know players. So I know what's going on out here. Going D2 does not preclude you from going pro. Okay, there are players who play at that level that end up playing in the G League, players who play overseas, make money, and make a full-time income playing basketball. So don't think that you have to go D1 just for the ego check, but at the same time you're messing up your opportunity because you don't get any game reps, you don't get seen, you graduate from college, you ain't got no game film to actually help you get on. Now you have to go to an exposure camp. When you could have went to a D2, you would have had 4 years of game film. So these are the things that you need to be thinking about when you're making your decisions about where you're going to play, what level you're at. If you're at a D1 sitting on the bench right now, you might want to drop down to a D2 so you can get on the court and get some game film, get some experience. You might average 20 at a D2. Instead of averaging 2 points a game at a D1, average 20 at a D2. Now you got all that game film. You might make all conference. Now you got overseas teams coming to you when you graduate. Instead of you being a D1 player, you got to go and invest in an exposure camp with 300 other players, and you got to try to prove yourself in front of all of them in that meat market. So these are the things that you need to be keeping in mind when you're deciding what level you're going to play at in college. I already explained to you that yes, it does matter, and I explained to you how it matters when it comes to your professional basketball prospects. Now, if you do not have a copy of this book called The Overseas Basketball Blueprint, it must mean that you hate the prospects of playing professional basketball. It must mean you don't want to play basketball, because this book is free. All you do is cover the shipping, and all you got to do that is go to balloverseas.com. It's a 237-page book. Everything you need to know to play professional basketball overseas is covered in this book. Is at balloverseas.com. Go to overseasbasketballblueprint.com. Make sure you also sign up to get a free 15-minute interview by me. I am going to interview you, find out what your challenges, needs, and frustrations are when it comes to professional basketball, so that we can make better material to better help you get to where you want to go playing ball. Again, the link is right down there in the description wherever you're watching this. Work on your game. Dre all day.